I suppose you're wondering what you're doing here.
What's it all about?
Sit down and I'll tell you.
I don't know who you are or who you work for. I will not make any deals with you. I've resigned. I will not be pushed, filed, stamped, indexed, briefed, debriefed, or numbered.
They might let me go if you give me some sort of information.
Northern area, number 6, heading for outer zone in our vehicle. Orange alert.
Escape or capture? Watch this exciting adventure of the prisoner.
Well, greetings, everyone. Imagination connoisseurs, members of the Post-Geek Singularity. I am Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am joined once again by my very esteemed guest, who I discovered when we were first on a stream together, loves Patrick McGoohan's seminal series, The Prisoner, as much as I do. As a matter of fact, I don't find anyone who loves it as much as I do lately, and it was so fun to find a kindred spirit. So my God, as suggested, we do these streams together where we are going to take you on a journey through all 17 episodes of Patrick McGoohan's perhaps one of the most influential television shows ever made, The Prisoner. And hopefully you all watched on Az's channel the introduction that we did to this wonderful show and how we feel about it. But today, we're going to begin our journey, our episode-by-episode journey through the series itself. And we begin with, of course, the first episode, Arrival. So it's so great to see you. Welcome to my channel, and thank you for doing this over here as opposed to across the pond in England, where we will do
that is great.
The next episode.
Yeah. This is a British-American production here, so it's not too bad, is it, really?
No.
Pleasure to be here, Rowan.
It's great to have you here. You know, I had so much fun. I really didn't know how our first episode was going to go. And we went for 2 hours, and it seemed like 2 minutes.
Yes.
I mean,
it was very, very quick 2 hours of my life, that.
It was fantastic. So, I mean, how should we begin? I was thinking to just jump right into the episode.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of weeks back we had the discussion, the general discussion. We went through themes. We went through kind of how we found the prisoner and various elements of that. And I think when we get into the actual specific episodes itself, I think it's really time to kind of just jump in with 2 feet and see where it goes. Some are quite formulaic in terms of they follow a standard procedure, and others are going to take us on journeys that we probably won't even imagine.
Well, you know, this episode, I guess, as far as The Prisoner is concerned, Arrival, the first episode, is pretty straightforward in terms of its... I mean, it begins with an extended version of the opening title sequence, which adds a little bit more detail, but it really sets the tone. Ron Grenier's beautiful theme. Patrick McGoohan, obviously, our character, our nameless character, although he might have a name. We talked about that last time, but our character shows up, and I've always loved the fact that The Prisoner opens with a car, a beautiful car that we've seen, a Lotus that we've seen from another particular series, if people are aware of that Lotus. But coming from the first shot it's coming from oblivion. You know, it's coming from almost you're in a nameless, faceless piece of asphalt, and our character roars into the frame. We don't know who he is. We don't know where he's come from or where he seems to be going, but we know he's in a hurry.
And we know he's bringing thunder with him.
He is bringing thunder with him. Every episode, as we saw, opens with a thunder crack. And what do you think? Why do you think that the episode? Why do you think they begin that way?
I think it's a very clever way to begin a series because it gives you all the exposition you need without a single word being said. It tells the story very simply. You know that this person is determined, is on a mission. You very simplistically see arriving at work, but instead of turning up for a day's business, is thumping down a piece of paper saying resignation.
Right.
Being very forthright in why he's putting it down, fist thundering on the desk as the thunder.
Well, that's the thing. He rolls into a very, obviously, it looks like a government building. He's in a hurry. He throws open these doors. He's clearly angry. He's really angry.
Yeah.
And he goes into this office, and it's very reminiscent of a James Bond MI6 kind of a place, like he's going to see M in a way, and he's like you say, he's railing at the desk, he's screaming and yelling, but it's silent. You don't hear what he's doing. You just hear the score, the great piece of music.
Yeah, I mean that music. If you heard the original by Ron Grenier, it's very subdued. It's very quiet, but it's got the same kind of tone. It's like and Patrick McGoohan dragged him into a room and was just like, no, I like, this is right, but you need to bump it up. It needs to be boom, boom, boom. And then suddenly, when we actually hear the theme tune for the first time, it's very sort of loud, bombastic. It's very sharp. These notes are very sharp. It's kind of very much onomatopoeic with the mood, though, of the protagonist that we see, who will not be named, but he might be called John Drake.
He might be called John Drake.
So it's just a very clever way of putting the character immediately into the situation without having to have an episode, half an episode, 15, 20 minutes of needless exposition. It was said very clearly what was going on. He left. He was followed. He went to his flat.
Well,
he was
wait.
Leave.
Before we get to that, what happens after that, one of the things that I really love is that once he storms out of the office, we have this great shot of this mechanized, like you see the system where his ID is this mechanized drawer with this ID coming, and his ID is dropped into it's like back in the 60s, it's like a typewriter, and he literally gets X'd out of existence.
Well, the interesting, what I found very interesting about that is we don't know who that is.
We don't know who.
We don't know if that is the government, the British government,
right,
that he's working for. We don't know if that's the village. We don't know who on earth is deleting
him. And it's this nameless, faceless, mechanized data processing center, that I've always thought was, I mean, clearly something ominous is going on there, but you don't see anybody working there. You just see, he's literally stamped and filed.
And that is John Drake's headshot.
Yes, and that comes into play later in the episode. But I always love that the very thing that we find a little later that he says this won't be done to him has already been done to him in this opening sequence.
Yes, yeah. It's almost to me it's kind of like birth.
Yes.
Instead of it symbolizes birth. This, and it literally from the moment of birth you are a number. You are a product of society. So although we see the resignation on that, in essence, this is the beginning of the person. This is his maneuvering into society, and this is his place in society. His place isn't an individual. His place is a number, a thing, a something, or other. So yeah, it does have some very interesting connotations attached to it.
And then of course he goes home and take it away. I mean, yeah, and clearly he's in a rush, man. I mean,
but the hearse, the symbolism of the hearse as well, because it symbolizes death. It's the death of his individuality. It's the like I said, it's the birth of his his product of the system. So we have birth and death within the beginning sequence as well.
Absolutely. And then of course, as you said, he gets gassed. And what's really great about this, it's so brief, but it's very clearly understood. I mean, we've seen this trope of gas coming through the keyholes, you know, and he looks up and he realizes, well, he was going fast, but he wasn't fast enough, you know.
But it's interesting if you think about it, because to kind of hop a few episodes into the future, do not forget me, oh my darling. The room that he's in is not connected to the front door. It's actually an offset room where you go down a corridor in his house. So there's actually a hallway in his house, and this is an offset room. So the gas would have to seriously travel. But the semantics of it are fine. I mean, that didn't come into it until like episode 13 or whatever.
Right.
But
Right.
it was it's all symbolic anyway. But I think that's when he was filling up his suitcase full of travel brochures. I think that was symbolic of escape. And the gassing was there is no escape.
No escape. And then, of course, he wakes up in the village.
Mm.
And what I've always loved about Arrival is it does have this, it's an extended version of the opening sequence that's later truncated and then combined with, we don't, obviously what they do when they combine it with the idea of number 2, that only happens later. It doesn't happen in this opening sequence because we haven't done that. We haven't been there yet.
No, we don't know. We don't know. The beautiful part of Arrival is we're all discovering.
Yes.
Every discovering for the first time. Like you said, number 2's not mentioned because number 2's not part of the equation. And the opening segment is isolation. And then when we see some people, he's trying to communicate as an individual. He's trying to be treated like an individual and treat other people like an individual. And so we still have the remnants of old. And it's only when he starts to discover the bizarre with the local taxis and the maps and things like that. Oh, I need a bigger map. Oh, sorry, sir. Much more expensive. Only in color. That's fine. Gives a bigger map. It's just a bigger map of the same map he had before, but literally just bigger in size, showing nothing other than the village.
Well, that's one of the things I love about this episode is the juxtaposition of the bucolic. It's a beautiful place, and yet it's creepy from the get-go. He's been gassed, but then he wakes up. We don't see anybody bring him anywhere. He just wakes up in a room. And
his room as well.
Absolutely. He just wakes up in the room and has what has changed? Has anything changed? You know, and then clearly as he starts looking around, oh yes, when he opens that window, you know, and it opens up onto this visage of I mean, what did you think like when you first watched this show? When if you remember, if you can think back, the first time you see the village, that image of the village, when it opens up, how did that? It's certainly the opposite of what you would think when a agent or anyone is gassed in a movie and they're hauled off somewhere. They wake up like in the boot of a car, or they wake up in a cell. He wakes up in a resort. You know, it looks like it's a great place at first. You think, wow, okay. And I can only imagine, I always have thought about what was it like for audiences to have first watched this show, and they didn't know, like when we saw it for the first time, it already was a legend. You know, it was, we already knew, I'd read about it in books, and it was this sort of famous show you couldn't see in America because it wasn't, there was no home video when I first saw it, and there was no way to see it, and then it finally came on PBS. And it always surprised me how it opened, you know, the way
it's the familiarity versus a complete and utter change of environment. I mean, I remember watching the first episode because the first episode, like I said, it is, you could view it as like just a kind of like an espionage spy 60s episode. And I do recall, because I'd seen Capricorn 1 before I'd ever seen The Prisoner. And it just reminded me of the scene in Capricorn 1 where Elliot Gould is going around to the person's house.
Oh, yeah.
And there's the different family there. And he's picking up the magazines and he's looking at the addresses on the backs of the magazine. And it's their address. And he's like, I've been here. I've drunk with him. And they're just like, what are you talking about? And to me, it kind of had that same similar vibe. of this complete mystery, because he wakes up and he's not disorientated. He's physically disorientated by the gas, but his environment is identical. So he's kind of like, did I fall asleep? Did I, you know? And then he just pulls the curtains and he's expecting to see the high rises from Buckingham Place.
Sure.
That's where it's set, in Buckingham Place. But instead you get this Mediterranean-esque village. And it's just that look on his face, instead of being like, it's just that look on his face of, what?
Yeah. Am I dreaming?
Well, which I think is much more profound, because it's very much in character. The character, although he gets angry, he's not sort of emotionally expressive. So him sort of looking at it, for him, is kind of like, we've got a mystery to solve here, quickly.
And one of the things I love as he ventures outside is, and we talked about this before, from a film editing standpoint, they use a lot of jump cuts.
Yes.
As he's going from place to place, which I thought was a bold move. It wasn't something you'd see a lot. And I mentioned to you in the film on Her Majesty's Secret Service, film editor Peter Hunt, who then directed that film, used a lot of jump cuts in the action scenes. And I don't think back then it was something people were. And when I mean jump cuts, not continuity between edits. Like when you go to the different shots, I mean, people know what jump cuts are now, but back then it really made it put it off kilter immediately as he begins his journey into the village. It's a little bit jarring, and it makes everything sort of quicker. The pace is picked up, and like he runs up into the bell tower and it really is effective.
And it's jump cuts, and it's close up facials, and it's zooms, quick zooms.
Yes.
And it's all very kind of, again, disorientating, because he clearly sees somebody in the bell tower, but then he goes into the bell tower, and by the time he gets to the top, there's nobody in the bell tower.
There's no one in the
which
bell
is
tower.
very indicative of the show, because then the whole show's about what's real, what's not real anyway.
Yes.
But then he sees the cafe, so.
The cafe and then I love, I mean, when the taxi shows up, it's just there as if it was just there for him, which it was.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, it's because even when he's talking to the woman in the cafe, and he's just saying, you know, where am I? What is this? You know, and all this kind of stuff. Normal standard questions. She's being the invasive member of the village that they are. When he goes around the corner, the telephone is actually blocking the road, the telephone stand. And that road's actually open. So it does kind of feel, his arrival does feel theatrical.
Absolutely.
As if this is a staged event for number 6, which again goes alongside some of the episodes. There's a lot of staged events for him, free-for-all staged events, many hap returns, stage events. So this is very sort of indicative of the village and the way that they treat people, or certainly special people. And so, yeah, he uses the phone, and then he gets, you know, where is this? Well, not a number. Yeah, don't have a number. No number. No, you know, call. He
right.
sort of hangs up.
Right.
You know, what? What's going on?
Well,
and then sees the taxi rank thing.
And what's really interesting is I love the way all of these people that he interacts with in the beginning, whether it's the taxi driver, whether it's the shop owner that sells him or gives him has the maps. You never get this idea that any of them, like, well, have you ever been to Switzerland? Have you ever left this place? No one ever speaks that there is an outside world at all. None of their language betrays the fact that there's anywhere other than the village.
Yes.
And
the closest we get to that is the taxi driver.
Well,
as
she
says,
says
local.
local.
I thought you might be a Pole. I thought you might be a Czech. And then he was like, what are Poles and Czechs doing here? This is very cosmopolitan.
Right.
But that's the last time we ever hear about country.
Yes, but she says that as if Poles and Czechs are not necessarily countries, but like different kinds of people.
Yes,
because,
different people though. Yes, yes.
and the just local service, and never is like, well, is there non-local? Is there international service? That never comes up. And for the audience, as you as an audience member, there's so much that's being conveyed to you about the situation that he's in that he's not getting, but we as audience members, we're like,
yes.
uh-oh. like we're in this case, we're a little bit ahead of our main character. We're a little bit ahead of, like, we realize the predicament he's in, where he's just trying to make sense of it and come up with what? He hasn't.
Yeah, because he wants a car self-drive. Where can I get a car?
Right. Can I rent? Where's Hertz?
Yeah. He's asking normal questions and he's getting village answers back. And all the while, I must stress, all the while he's wearing his outfit, which is this beautiful grey suit, charcoal grey suit with black polo shirts underneath. Nice big Italian black shoes. It's all very suave. It's all very sophisticated, and he fits right in with the village in his outfit.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting that he does feel the kind of man in a suitcase sort of thing. It does feel as if he's on another John Drake episode for Danger Man.
Right.
So we have an element of familiarity, which it's still trying to tease to the audience. But as we see, she literally takes him around the square of the village and then drops him back off right outside his house. And he's kind of like, what is going on here?
Yeah. And she already knew
this little place.
She already knew where his house was. Everything is sorted out, and
she's Asian as well. So the conversation, she's Asian, mentioning Poles, Czechs, he's British. So yes, we are getting a very cosmopolitan, international vibe to the show now.
But cheerful. Everybody's very
Stepford wife cheerful.
Absolutely. And
very macabre.
It is very much so, and it is. The creepy factor. They don't shy away from it immediately. You're the audience again. The audience is like, wow, this is really. Are these people robots? I've always wondered, like, because I've never read anything about somebody who watched this show when it was first on. There's not a lot of accounts of what it was like to see this show.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's an older show, so people that would write there weren't fans like there are now. People would write articles, and the first time I saw Star Wars, it was like this, and we hear so many of those stories, but there aren't any stories about what was it like to first watch The Prisoner when it first aired.
Apart from Fallout.
Right. Well, that's something else.
Plenty of that, which will come at the end of the we're people who are watching the show based off reputation.
Yes.
We're not just thinking, oh, John Drake's back, maybe, possibly. And it does appear that the only reason why he wasn't named John Drake was a licensing issue. Ultimately, if he was to be called John Drake, then there would have been some license issues in terms of money being paid out.
Sure.
This was a Patrick McGoohan passion project, funded by Lou Grade. So, in terms of that, a chunk of the budget would have gone to the licensee. So that's really why we didn't get John Drake as John Drake.
Sure.
But he played it pretty much like John Drake.
Well, also, about that, nowadays, like with fandom, the way fandom works now, I consider myself OG, like an original geek. And this was one of those things that when I was growing up, I had read about. This had a huge reputation for me as a kid before I'd seen it. And I imagine today so much of the classical genre material, even Star Wars. Star Wars is 43 years old today, or this year. So this was one of the shows for me as a kid when my fandom was developing, how it already was considered this amazing show. And so when I sat down to watch it, I'm like, huh, show me. I mean, why is this show awesome? You know, why is it, let me decide. I mean, now that I'm a young, developing fan of, a connoisseur of science fiction, fantasy, and horror, you show me how good this show is. And
I was the flip reverse. I was the non-cynical, wide-eyed, I hear great things, I can't wait.
Well, wait, I wasn't cynical about it, but I was excited, like how, I don't mean that I was saying, well, I don't think it's going to be so great. I was just like, how great can it be? And for me, 3 or 4 minutes in after when he arrived, 3 or 4 minutes after his arrival at the village, I was so locked into this show. My focus was razor sharp, and I was like, oh my God, this is so up my alley. This is everything I love. There was elements, obviously, of James Bond, of science fiction, of horror, all at once. And it was very apparent to me, I think I was 12 when I first saw this, just how much this show spoke to me. And it was... I think
the wow factor would have been the reveal of the village through the curtains. Because that's your first mystery with the show as well.
Yes.
So even though you begin to understand quicker than the prisoner what's going on here, the wow factor is, wait a minute, he's in his house, though. He's in his house. He's pulled back the curtains. How can this be here? He's in his house.
Yeah.
You can't have moved his house to this place. And then the door automatically opens and you realize it's a facsimile. And then it's like, I get it.
I mean,
I get it.
You know, nowadays that trope is familiar. When you wake up in your own room, but it turns out that the windows are boarded up because aliens are manipulating you or something. So nowadays it's a trope that we've seen over and over again. But back then it was something that was not so familiar. So it really threw you for a loop when you see it. And as soon as you start seeing him interact with people, especially the scene with the map, and it's just like this guy, like, how could this guy not understand? But the fact that he's not breaking character, he's not saying anything, and it did such a brilliant job. 15 minutes into this, you're like, okay.
Yeah, because people are playing dumb, but they're doing, in essence, what he's asking them to do.
Right, exactly.
So they're not so much being
Bring you back.
Okay.
Now we're back. That was it. You know, but did you see on the stream that you were a question mark?
Yeah. Well, I didn't know if you had dropped because you froze on my screen. So I thought you had dropped. So I carried on talking for a bit.
Oh, that's
And then
good.
I realized that a question mark had popped up. And I was like, oh no, have I lost my internet connection? And then I realized my internet connection was fine.
That was such a what an odd thing. But anyway, we're back.
Yeah.
By the way, for everyone, I'll edit that out in our stream.
Never happened.
So, but you know what? I think some nefarious government operatives.
Yes.
Maybe as we spoke about the village, something nefarious was happening, because I've never seen that happen before.
Some gas came in here, and then next thing I know, I was whisked away.
So, where were we? He was about to get a phone call once he's been brought back to his house.
Yeah, he went to the shop, the village shop, to try and get a map. He got the black and white map. He then asked for a bigger map. This is not what I meant. He gets the color map, which is just bigger in size, and then goes back to his flat. And then we get number 2 pinging him on the phone. But as we see in later episodes, what happens to number 6 here is a tactic. It's a tactic that they use with a lot of new arrivals.
Right.
Disorientate them, put an arm around them, and hope that they just kind of sit down and chat. Pretend you're the good guy, pretend you're on their side, and then extend a warm and cordial greeting to put them into a sense of belonging again, or familiarity again, of structure again, which is one thing they're out of.
Right. And it's very. Do you know why they actually decided to shoot at Portmeirion? Like, whose idea was that?
Well, McGoohan had done an episode of Danger Man.
Yes.
There. And I watched that one recently, actually. Just by the by. All you see of Portmeirion is when he just drives through the beginning arch, which is very close, actually, to his abode.
Yeah.
And then it goes straight to soundstage, and then it's just soundstage from there on in. And I think it stayed with him, and he thought to himself, this is a wonderful location. And then when he was devising The Prisoner, again, it was considered as well, that Portmeirion place that we went to when we shot that Danger Man that stuck with you. That seems like a very interesting place of this distorted, familiar but sort of sinister as well, and holiday resort, but not so much. And
I mean, I always thought that was such a genius choice to have sort of this an open air prison, as it were, and it was. I always thought it was just a genius idea because it's sort of a timeless place where the architecture is it's the last place you'd think a man like a secret agent like John Drake would wind up, because it seems more, as far as resorts go, it's not exactly Monte Carlo, No,
I mean, one of the really interesting aspects of it is, if you've ever seen the filming of Arrival, which I have seen, you got to give a lot of credit to the sound department for the sound editing.
Yes.
Because the sound editing is very echoey. You get this as if he's alone in the village. But they were filming while tourists were there. And there's literally behind the camera rows of tourists just lined up watching them film these early moments in Arrival. And it's so funny to see that when you see the corresponding shot in the show, which is just quiet, isolation, nothing. But we've got these, 30, 40, 50 tourists just behind the camera. Oh, isn't that nice that he's doing that man, isn't he?
Well, and another thing you see in all of this is the actual, as we know of them now, fonts. The typeface that is used on everything, on everyone's numbers, and the actual, it's not just the numbers, but the words and the things that were, I mean, that also in a way was sort of, it kept you off kilter. It almost looked incongruous with the buildings and everything else. It was almost as if somehow that everything was stamped. Everything it came from some kind of it looked like it was official somehow. It didn't belong in this place. So you knew that everything was part of a much bigger thing. Like the entire village had been stamped everywhere by the bureaucracy, by the whatever sinister, whatever organization ran this place. You knew it, so it was, in a way, it dehumanized everything. It coded everything. Everywhere you went, all the signage, and all of it was the same. Like on the maps, the actual font on the map, it's all the same everywhere. Like it all comes from the same place. And when you see, of course, in later episodes, when there's the election, for instance, and you see the posters. And everybody's, it's the same.
And the tally-ho and...
all of that. It's all the same font, which I always love that. The village is actually branded. It's their branding.
Yeah, it is a very bureaucratic place, though.
Yes.
Very, very much so. And this Sunshine Resort is the superficial. It is very much the superficial. It's the underbelly of the village, which is the sinister bureaucracy of extraction. And so, everything, even the title, The Prisoner, it's in the same font as the village font.
Yeah, because, that's...
it all corresponds, yeah.
Whatever corporation, whatever... I don't know, runs this whole thing, and it
could be Disney, you know. It really could be. It could be Disney that runs this place, because you got your numbers, but you got the penny farthing, and that could be like the Mickey Mouse,
right?
That
exactly,
is the Mickey Mouse of the village. But the penny farthing is meant to be symbolic of technology moving too quickly for societal development.
Yes.
That's what it really kind of stands for, the small wheel, the massive wheel.
And then also...
and I do have a penny farthing model upstairs, actually. It's up in the attic at the moment, but because of the prisoner, yeah.
Well, it's almost like, in a way, it added to me when I first started watching the show, it added, in a way, this futuristic element, in a way, because that font did not look like Old English, it looked like this modern font. So it was a way to say, it immediately said, no, we're in an environment that I don't know why, but it always screamed like we're in a science fiction.
Yes,
you're in a Kafka-esque prison now.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you go into number 2's abode, you're greeted by a normal hallway. Waiting room, whatever. But as soon as you go as soon as the double metal doors open, you realize you're not in Kansas anymore.
No, I think you're in a Bond lair. I mean, it looked like suddenly you walked into a Ken Adams set that might have been Blofeld's lair. Yeah, I think that was very intentional. And just like in Thunderball, the chairs come up out of the ground, and clearly we're like, okay, we've gone into the super science portion of all this, so none of this is real. We're
super advanced. Our technology is second to none. We need and want to know everything. That is how we operate.
And I think one of the great things about, when we talked about it in the last episode, when number 6, well, I'll call him number 6 from now on, is summoned to see number 2. And I love how number 2 is like this almost jovial, well, hello, old chap, why don't you come talk to me? It's all...
Yeah, exceedingly English, exceedingly British. He's already got the cart out for breakfast, bacon and eggs, toast, tea.
And it's funny because they ask him in the scene, how would you like your, and then they already know. But they're still asking him, what would you like for breakfast? And he would say, one eggs or 2, it's 2 or whatever. And they lift up, they already knew. They've already, and it was another way to say, for an audience to know that, oh my God, these guys are even ahead of his breakfast choices.
We know about you. We know all about you.
And are they reading his mind? I mean, it's it could be anything. And they're having this very nice conversation, but then we get the first time and some of the most classic dialogue that everybody knows that came out of his mouth. I'm not a number. I'm a free man, and I will not be stamped, briefed, debriefed, or numbered.
Yeah, and I'll not be pushed, filed, stamped, indexed, briefed, debriefed, or numbered. And I think it's the title that says, I'm not a number, I'm a free man. I believe in the first opening exchange, he says, I'm not a number, I'm a person. That's the open exchange with number 2, because it's quite a relatively cordial exchange.
Yes.
Sure, he's a little bit sharp, but it's cordial. And even when he's showing him the spy... Oh, no, you're still there? Oh, my goodness me, I thought you'd gone for a minute then.
No.
you were kind of like nodding, then he just stopped, and I was like, even when he's showing him off the image that they've taken from his apartment, he's just like, oh, what should I, I've just come back from so-and-so, we're feeling a little bit under the weather. Maybe I should go on a holiday somewhere. So, and it's all still very cordial, but they're saying, look, mate, we know, we follow you, we know all about you, but there's something that we don't know about you, and we really want to know.
Yeah, it's so great how they show just how invasive they've been with his life.
Yes.
Even to the point where I love when number 2 is narrating what's going on. Oh, did you hear a click over there?
Yes.
It's so great, but still, he's still very, in a way, almost sing-songy, and he's very he's laying down that this horrible idea that that our main character's life, whether it's John Drake or not, has been completely violated, and not just for a long time. He's been watched for a long time, and it's horrifying. I mean, and what's so strange is when you watch it now, like going back and watching Arrival now, you watch this and you're like, we're here.
It's kind of, we're doing it to ourselves, never mind the village.
We all live in the village.
We're allowing Google. I mean, this is listening in. I know it's listening in because I say stuff and then I go online and there's an advert that pops up talking about the stuff I was talking about. The microphone is taking in information. Cameras are taking in, imagery. When we type it online, it's being recorded. You're never going to scrub it. It's going to be there. But we are offering it ourselves.
Right, willfully.
This is at a time where,
we have been maneuvered to willfully give it up.
Yes.
And we're like, oh, yes, let me post on, Instagram. I mean, every time you post a picture, facial recognition software is, I'm sure there are places where there's already deep fake avatars of you wandering around somewhere. It's all been done. I mean, and this was 53 years ago. And the way that the surveillance state, the rise of where we're at now, and then as we see more and more of whoever the clandestine organization is that is running the village, just how deep that rabbit hole goes. And I'm sure, again, at the time, I'm always thinking, what did people think about this back in the day? And people must have thought, oh, this is all poppycock,
Oh, yeah.
And
there weren't cameras on every street corner. You didn't have mobile phones. You didn't have internet. You barely had a regular tourist camera. That would be a bit of a luxury for a lot of people to take those sort of snaps.
And we see later in the episode when you actually see the surveillance, the eyes in the sky, the teeter-totter, the surveillance teeter-totter as it spins around. And as if they can already see everywhere. And there's no place they can't look.
Well, if you notice, it's revolving. And on the ground, it's a map of the village.
Yep.
All the way round. So when it's revolving, it's literally saying we have every aspect of the village under surveillance. Every single aspect. Which they pretty much do.
And what's so great about this particular episode is the episode moves on, it reveals you're getting so much world building and so much backstory, even though you don't necessarily know how much you're getting at the same time. And it's doing a great job of setting up this scenario. And as we move through the episode, and the way they're going to manipulate him through the rest of the series, and how it's really elegantly done. And from a storytelling and from a scripting standpoint, I wish there was more writing like this today. I mean, actually, there's some great writing, but really, really elegant work.
Well, because Arrival is several steps ahead of the show. Because once it doesn't really establish, well, it does, but it only really establishes the interchanging of the number twos right at the end of the episode.
Yes.
And then the very next episode, it's not even Baker. It's another number two.
Yeah.
So it kind of brings into that premise. And then once you've seen the series, you can look back at Arrival and understand why the first number two was there. And he explains it to his colleague in the exchange. Because when he is the person, which is, he's your friend. This is your friend. This is your buddy. We're on the same side. We just need to know why you did it. We're on the same side. This is a lovely place if you just cooperate with us.
Right.
Type of business. And then when he goes to the exchange and the guy's talking about, politics, what your favorite religion, politics, and he smashes his little fucking thing off the desk. And then he storms off, and then his friends all, and then he just says, this one might be a tricky, this might be a tricky one, this. And that's that number two saying, right, my skill set isn't set for this person. He's not going to fall for my trap. So we're going to have to get Baker in. and Baker's going to have to be a little bit more firm and a little bit more, So yeah, you it's subtle, and you don't really appreciate that until number twos down the line. They all have their respective skill sets to try and break him down.
No, it's just done. It's done so elegant, and it really is. And again, as a viewer, from an audience perspective, all of this information being conveyed is drawing you in as an audience. I mean, you're constantly being pulled toward the screen. There's never a moment where the audience is going, "Wait, what? What's happening here?" You buy into it utterly, and you begin to feel the horror of his situation. Again, before he does, because he's still under the impression, well, he can just walk out of here. Like, it's fine that you're going to keep me here, but he doesn't realize his predicament quite yet.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm out.
Right.
You can, this nonsense, stop asking me these questions. I'm on our side. I'm out of here. I'm packing my bag. Let's go. Take me back. It's not going to happen, mate. You're here. You're here for the long haul now. You're not returning, because we don't even know who that number two represents.
No.
We don't know that he represents the British government. In actual fact, it's probably highly unlikely that he does. They try and play that familiarity game, but it's clear that these number twos are from multiple different countries with multiple different allegiances to multiple different places.
But not at first. You don't know that. And again, if you hadn't ever watched the show yet.
But that's the trick. That's the trap.
And it's so well done, because they're bonding on that good Englishman tip. They're both there, and that's how they're relating to one another. And it's
come on, old boy, what's going on here?
And
what's all this business about?
We're both in the game. We've been in the game together, and do we know each other?
Why did you quit? What's all that nonsense about? You're a good man. You're a good man. You did great work for us. What's all this about? Just that's the sense of we're on the same side. We know what's going on. We know what about you. We're clearly representing the same people. Why did you quit?
Just tell me.
Yeah, I mean, I believe you. I think it was a matter of principle. But can you just tell me why? Go into why. It's very clever little trap to fall in.
And what's really interesting is that the central question, which is why did you quit? I mean, it could have been an easy answer, like, well, I didn't appreciate your methods, or well, I felt let down. But really, the question, it becomes a much larger issue. I mean, it's almost like the idea of why did you quit obviously is metaphoric more than anything else.
Yes.
But even that gets revealed more as the series goes along. But because at first we are taking everything here at face value. We understand that he's in this open air prison even before he does. But the idea that we just need to know why you quit, it seems like a simple question with a simple answer. That like,
but
why?
It's not.
No. And yet he holds on to this dearly through the rest of the series.
I mean, I think the question of why did he resign is it's the question. If he answers that question, he answers everything. It's the door. It's if he answers that question, he opens the door and they take everything from him. They take all the secrets. They take lots. So that's the door to be guarded. That's the door to be locked at all times. It's like when you're captured as a soldier, you give your name, your rank, and your number, whatever
Sure.
it is, and you don't give anything else. With him, it's kind of the same principle. Why did he resign? Not getting anything.
But what I also thought was interesting in the opening sequence when he's railing in the office, it seems that he is saying exactly why he's resigning. I mean, you never hear it.
And there's a letter of resignation, which would obviously say something.
Yes.
But it could be superficial, because it could just be, I'm resigning on the grounds of principle. Signed, John Drake.
Yes.
But it could be something as simple as that.
And whether it is or whether it isn't, it doesn't really matter because obviously we know that the spies know too much. I mean, they know where all the bodies are buried, and I think that's what the insinuation here is, and I think that's why it works in this case. We
get a little look in Chimes of Big Ben at the end of Chimes of Big Ben. We get that. Do not forsake me, oh my darling, when he's the colonel. We kind of get a little bit into that again. And Many Happy Returns, we kind of get little looks in those episodes of why he resigned. But I think the Chinese of Big Ben was the big one, but we'll have to leave that to another time.
Yes, we have to leave that to another time. but so then the episode goes on, and he starts to meet people in the village. And he meets a damsel in distress, as it were.
Well, he's number 2 takes him on the tour of the village because something very important happens. What was quite interesting is there's a part when he's walking around showing the old folks home and all this kind of stuff, and there's a part where number 2 and number 6 get split up.
Right.
And number 6 walks a little bit on his own, and then he joins then he comes to the square, and then he joins number 2 again. And the reason why that happened is because the person playing number 2 had to leave filming. He had some personal issues that he needed to deal with immediately, and he had to leave the filming. And they needed to keep filming because they only had Portmeirion for such a limited time. And so they contrived the idea that number 2's moved on to the next destination, and number 6 is still kind of looking around at different aspects of the village. And then the person who's on the balcony, that's not number 2, and they positioned the megaphone in front of his face to block out that is not the actor. And then when he became free, they did those shots from the soundstage.
Right.
But the introduction we had was the introduction of Rover, which I think was possibly the most amazing serendipitous thing that could have happened to the show, because if their Rover that they had conceived made it into the show, it would have been a farce.
Yeah, I don't think that would have worked. But before we talk about Rover, I wanted to ask you, the old folks' home. Did you get the idea that these were guys that had capitulated? That they had long ago?
Yeah, I think they've long been there, possibly World War II. I think World War II veterans, some were that old, possibly World War I veterans. And I told you after the show last week, there was a lovely Easter egg which I'd never seen before at the old folks' home. And when they're sat down chatting, behind them on another one of the tables were the 2 undertakers that had gassed him and brought him to the village. And I only saw it for the first time when I was rewatching the other week. And I was like, I'd never seen that before.
I mean, I always had the idea that these guys, they had been broken by the village, and they'd been living there for so long, and they were living out their lives, and that the idea that a lot of people were there, but intermixed with, like, everybody in the village couldn't have been secret agents, or did they come from other walks of life? Like, was the village a place that serviced lots of different industries? I mean,
well, we know that there were like secretaries and stuff like that who had just stumbled across information or seen something that they weren't meant to have seen, or they saw something which they were meant to have seen, but the village wanted it. So we do know that there were people from different vocations.
Sure, but I mean,
at the village.
But those were kind of people that stumbled in. But I always thought in my mind that they didn't mean to see anything. But I always got this impression that the village didn't just service the intelligence industry, but it serviced anybody. Like, if
I think the village was working in that world. I think the village was working for everyone.
Right.
I think it was working for the British, for the Americans, for the Russians, for the Chinese. I think it was like an ensemble place of we will take your trash out. Almost.
Yes, absolutely.
We will be the trash disposal unit, and we will take the people who you can't handle off you. We're that organization. So, yeah, I mean, there's the colonel who's at the old folks' home, and in one of the episodes, number 6, is just like, which army did you serve in? Which division? And he can't answer the question, and he gets arms, and then wanders off, and it's just like that would have been a very simple question to answer, but. Did he not answer because he didn't know? Did he not answer because he knows the repercussions that you will have? Multiple. Again, this was the beauty of the show, because he was asking almost rhetorically. Because he didn't expect an answer back. He didn't expect the colonel to reply. Right. It's like it's just like I know the score. What's going on here? It's just number 6 being a bit of a dick, but rightfully so. Kind of being He was playing the game as much as they were playing the game.
Do you think... Why do you think that at the time that this came out, you're talking late 60s, but yet the ideas of identity and who are you, and the idea that your thoughts are your own. Why do you think that McGoohan was obsessed with these ideas at the time? I mean, we're coming out of, obviously World War II. This was post the assassination of John F. Kennedy, which I always thought this idea that conspiracies and what was going on in the 60s, the rise of Eisenhower's warning about the military-industrial complex when he left office, and what was going on was sort of feeding into what happened.
Well, there were. You could look at it from multiple different angles, I think. You could look at it from the Cold War situation, where you had the communist versus democracy.
Like the book The Manchurian Candidate, or the movie John Frankenheimer's film.
But even in places like America, you had J. Edgar Hoover. You had, this witch hunt for the commies as well. And, that strikes very much today. Very much today that we're going in, but maybe a little bit more correct. I don't think in the 60s it particularly was. I think there was witch hunts for witch hunt's sake and paranoia, and I think that was that's a huge theme of the show, is paranoia.
Right,
everybody thinks the enemy's everyone.
Well,
governments think they're. Sorry, go on.
Oh no, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was just going to say governments view external countries as the enemy, but in the same breath, they still look at their citizens as the enemy as well. There's always a suspicion and a paranoia there too. Well, the village wants to know everything, and that is a paranoia state.
I mean, we had, of course, the blacklist here. We had Americans informing on fellow Americans, and we were turning on one another and informing on one another, which is something you'd think that would happen in a police state, or something like in the Soviet Union. You have the intelligence services, and I feel like in a way now, with our identity politics, and as soon as you don't speak correctly, mobs will be sent against you, and you have wrong think, and we're going to come after you. And now what's really interesting, where before in the 50s and 60s, this idea of the individual and the sovereign individuality of a person is something that should be respected. Now it's not that way. The same way we've turned our lives over to phones with surveillance equipment, now we've actually turned over our whole, say the identitarian left has now, they will come after you with pitchforks, and they will imprison you in a village of your own right think, if you're not careful.
Yeah, and they don't know where to stop.
No. And
that's the thing. It reminds me, what you'll know the name, the Next Generation episode where the old woman is brought on, the older woman is brought on to find out what's going on the Enterprise.
Oh, the drumhead.
The drumhead.
Yeah, Gene Simmons, Admiral Satie.
Oh, yeah, which is just one of my favorite episodes of Next Gen, and it's just about this young Vulcan inverted commas ensign who wasn't actually, he just had a part Romulan heritage,
Right.
which he did not declare because of the, it'd basically be saying I'm a part Russian if you're American,
Sure.
I'm part Chinese, I'm part Japanese, and we know the native, the American Asian treatment after World War II and such. So he just wanted to keep it hidden because he didn't want to be branded, just didn't want it to be held against him. But it turned into the witch hunts of witch hunts, and then it wasn't him, it was everyone and everything. And that is where we are now, and that kind of is the Village's attitude. And that's why I think we have the question of why did he resign? That's the break. Because once that falls, they destroy, they take the lot. They take all of you.
And what's interesting now is this show, The Prisoner, is almost the exact opposite. Now we have people that want to turn over their individual identities and join the Village. Please allow me to be part of your tribe. I only want to think the way you think, and I don't want my individuality to be here anymore. I want to believe in what you activists tell me I should believe in, and I want to believe that I was born a racist or born a transphobe or born somebody that is, and it's incredible to me that everything is sort of now inverted. And when you watch,
I mean, when we get to Checkmate, we'll be dealing with all of that sort of stuff. Who are the prisoners and who are the warders?
Right.
And we're in that position right now. Yeah.
And it's interesting to go back and watch this now, because what it was prophesizing has come to pass, but in a different sort of a way. That in a way that instead of having one clandestine organization, it's the Village itself is coming after you. And
because we know from the first episode that there are people who immediately capitulated and just gave over everything straight away for a quiet life.
Right.
Or for preferential treatment, or to be left alone, whichever reason it was, or to join in, as would be discovered later on. But yeah, I mean, this is where this is why, to me, the prison. We touched upon a prisoner on Friday Night Tights, and I realized that you knew the prisoner, and I was like, God, I'd love to talk more to Robert about this. And then I had the opportunity behind the scenes, unfortunately for you guys, to talk to Robert for about an hour and a half or so. And we just started to discuss the prisoner then. That's when that's why I reached out about this show, because I thought, I don't think there's a show that is more relevant today than The Prisoner.
I would completely agree with that. And
you can see so much reflected in society of today by these episodes. Obviously, they weren't intended to reflect that, but it was certainly intended to reflect how society is moving itself. So you can't say, well, this episode was about Twitter, but the point is there is an episode which kind of pushes on social media and Twitter and acceptance and change of mind being the episode I'm just talking about, on being neutral. Cancel culture, the whole job lot. So the show is relevant, more relevant today than I think any show that's on television.
No, absolutely. And it's also what I find really, really interesting is these ideas of at its core, the individual. I'm a number, not a free man. I mean, I'm a free man, not a number. Well, now
I am not a number. Yeah.
Now we don't just have one number today. We have 10,000 numbers. That's how we're categorized. I mean, wherever we've gone, how many passwords do we have? How many different numbers or accounts or this, that, and the other thing? We've been inundated with numbers. We are people that are in our own prisons are full of. We've been imprisoned by numbers that we've willfully created. And
order number 62481 is arriving tomorrow. Order number 128486 is arriving 2 weeks. This address, that address, the other address.
Customer number.
Customer number, customer reference number, ID number, We are all numbers. We are we discussed a couple of weeks ago how we are currently living in the village. The world is the village in essence nowadays, and we are all members of the village right now. And you got some people who are fighting for. When I say individuality, I think we got a lot of people fighting for free speech. I think we got a lot of people who others want silenced. We have a social media and a Google and an Amazon, which are operating under partisan positions, silencing people, removing people from the platform, demonetizing them, dehumanizing them. This is village tactics. This is number two. This is the way that the village operates. And you might not want to hear what some of these people have to say. You might disagree with what people have to say, and that's absolutely fine. But in the same breath, these people have the right to speak as much as anyone else. And the day we start to become authoritarian, which again the village is the day that you realize you will lose your identity.
Well, again, you hear people, college students talking about, we don't really need free speech. I would rather be in a position like, I would rather live in the village, which is, let's face it, it could be a safe space for you forever if you want it to be. The village offers you conformity, it offers you comfort, it'll make you happy.
But then you have the chance to become mutual. Then you have the chance to be dragged away from your bed at night and experimented on and extracted. And the rules change in the village very regularly. As he's not to be touched with this, he's not to be touched with that. And then a little bit down the line, sod it, we're doing it.
Yeah.
This guy can't die. We're putting him into a situation where one person's coming out alive. The rules will change depending on what is necessary and what is desired. So these people who want to hand over their freedoms and their liberties with such ease, they don't understand or appreciate the people that died to give you that, to give you the opportunity to speak your mind, to give you the opportunity to screech about how repressed you are on a platform that won't touch you, in a country that won't touch you, without fear of reprisal, without fear of being dragged away in the middle of the night from your bed, without fear of your family being taken away, never heard of again. And you cry repression. You've never had it so good. You never will have it so good.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we are... the human race is better off now than it's ever been. And yet we're being convinced how, it's so terrible now. It's so horrible. Please accept this, and please, if we'll make it better for you, just sign on the dotted line.
Yeah.
And don't read the terms of service. Just sign it. Don't read it. Sign it. Or
you're being told who's the good guy. You're being told who's the bad guy. We all are. Virtually every single one of us are living better than royalty 100 years ago.
Hot and cold running water.
Better.
Showers whenever you want.
Technology beyond comprehension. Entertainment, sex, everything on tap. Everything that we could possibly need right now, we have on tap. We have a few clicks away. We have a phone call away. We have 100 years ago, you couldn't have that. Even royalty couldn't have that. Things would have to put in place. Things would have to go through a process. Now, we're in an age of immediate gratification.
And people who are marginalized in any way, you can go find those groups. You can find groups that believe in what you believe, or you can find people with your same opinions where you can share stories together, where you can commiserate, where you can actually reach out and talk to people at the click of a button, at the click of a keystroke. And yet there is so much insecurity and anger and it's manufactured.
It is very much manufactured.
It's manufactured, and this show, The Village, is very much It's such a precursor to all of it. And it's so strange to me to see how we're also like we manipulate ourselves. You know, we talk about we come from privilege. Well, to live in the 21st century makes, as you just pointed out, every single human being has privilege. More privilege than any humans have had. All humans, like you said, more than even royalty had 200 years ago. And it's who wants to really, I mean, the only thing that we have left, like the show says, is our own individuality. And who will speak up for each one of us to be who we are. You know, that's when I think about things like Watchmen, when Dr. Manhattan talks about the thermodynamic miracle of life in the entire infinitude of the universe. Yeah. That you exist is the thermodynamic miracle. And yet now we are all not respecting that idea that each one of us are walking miracles that are here for a finite period of time. It's like, you know what? Screw you. If you don't believe what I believe and you're a toxic individual and whatever, and rather than look at somebody and say, you are an amazing individual. There is no one else like you, unless you have a twin.
There will never ever be anyone else like you.
No one ever. And so why would you want every person to think exactly the same way?
Yeah, you are the blink of an eye of the universe. That is all. We are here and we are gone in that short space of time. The universe has been here for billions of years before us. It will be here for billions of years after us. If you want to use that time to cry, to whinge, to moan, if you want to use that time to point the finger and call people unmutual, if you want to use that time, then this is why we need the individual. We need the individual to stand up. This is why we need the people that might not say the things we want to hear, that might just say things we absolutely hate. But we need the individual, and we need to have the capacity to make our own mind up for us. Not corporate, not brand, not the village. The individual. Well, and unfortunately, this is what's being sapped away.
I completely agree, and you know, one of the things that I guess my mission in life, if I had a mission statement, is to recognize, and I say this at the end of my own YouTube show, that every person you meet has a story to tell you haven't heard. They might have variations on a theme that you have heard, but they, as individuals, each person has a different story. And even though you might not agree with what their story is, you might not agree with their lifestyle, you might not agree with whatever their journey through life is, you've got to hear their story. You have to let them speak. Because even though you might not, on a meta scale, you might not appreciate or understand or even agree with how they live their lives, there's going to be something. There's going to be something that you're going to learn from that person that is going to expand your worldview if you let it. You're going to learn, you yourself, your mind will be expanded somehow. And to not let that person speak and to not hear their story is a disservice, because, like you said, in the infinitude of the universe, that person is unique. And there is something that person has that is valuable. And now we're in a position where people, I don't like what that guy said or that girl said, so they can't come speak on my campus.
Yeah, I mean, this is we're going to get onto another episode about that Hammer and Anvil.
Yes.
You know, there's going to come an episode, Hammer and Anvil, which is very much going to be when Brand panics, when Brand starts to make mistakes themselves, when Brand starts to push customer away. Hammer and Anvil is very much that sort of episode as well. And that actually returns power back to the individual, as we see. So, oh God, this is the beauty of the show. Like I said, the themes which will run throughout are just going to be there. But kind of switching back on to the arrival itself, we got to the position of the introduction of Rover.
Right.
The punishment, the patroller, the guard,
the smotherer.
Well, yeah, the smiter, the smoter of people. It's kind of judge, jury, and executioner, and you don't quite understand how Rover works, whether it's operated by the village or the village just can call upon Rover to deem justice.
I mean, you do see it launched. You know, it does. And what I really like is then in the village again, when you see, you know, you've seen number 2 and his man Friday, his servant. But then you see when you're in the surveillance room, you see that there's a lot of other people, there's a lot of other employees that are part of this inner sanctum. So it's not just number 2 and people out in the village. There's like people who have day jobs there. You know, there's your core support team, like in Westworld.
They go back to houses at night, you know.
Absolutely, and the I always called him Lobot, the bald guy, you know, from who's in there.
Oh yes, Peter something.
Yeah, and you know, it's I say Lobot from Empire, Lando Calrissian's
yeah.
And it's just because so there is that kind of thing, and so it again you're adding into the world building, and Rover is a part of that. You know, and is there 100? You know, are these things?
Yeah.
And where are they? Where do they come from? Can you launch them anywhere? And you know, was this technology? It seems like, in a way, it's the one production element that strains credulity a little bit. I mean, it's basically a giant balloon being blown by wind machines, you know, and it's only...
But it's that sound effect which makes Rover,
yes.
It's that roar.
And then it's
makes Rover terrifying.
It's this putting it coming over the face, and that is when it sells it. It sells the whole idea, and then when it takes you away, and in a way, it's like the Phantom Zone.
Sinister, because it's Sophia. There's nothing to it.
No,
it doesn't have a facial expression. You can't tell if it's happy, mad. You can't tell if it's sentient, non-sentient. It gives away nothing. And this is why it's probably the most serendipitous thing to ever happen to the show, because it was going to be this god-awful go-kart with a bloody light on the top of it, and it looked daft. It looked absolutely ridiculous. And the beauty was that everyone looked at it and was just like, this is shite. You know, the person inside of it couldn't breathe. You know, they couldn't move it around. They couldn't see shit. And it was just... and so they were kind of like taking a moment to reflect. What can we do? Because we need to film. And then they just looked up in the sky and they were just like, what are those? And then somebody just said, oh, they're weather balloons. Get them. Get 20 of these. Let's go. And then they hooking on fishing wire and dragging them around. And
but what's great
at the end of Arrival, it's attached to Patrick McGoohan's boot.
Right. But it also added. It pushed the show. The village itself was already a bit surreal, but this added both a science fiction, but mostly a surreal element to the proceedings that removed it further away from a reality and more into a fantasy science fiction context. But just when it went a little too far, they pulled it back enough. I mean, it was such a simple, elegant solution, but it also had it. You would never see something like that in a James Bond movie. You know, somebody would say, we don't buy this. But in The Prisoner, in a way, the concept of Rover set up for the rest of the show that you could push the surrealistic nature of what's going on further and further and further. So I thought it was a brilliant conceit and the way it worked.
To me, I mean, Rover to me, though, represented the kind of faceless... to me, it's like indicative of the army. It was indicative of the police force.
Sure.
It was indicative of the services that you would have at your disposal as an authoritative ruler. So it could be the police. It could be the rescue services, as we saw in some episodes as well.
Right.
But it could be the army. It was that sort of aspect that it brought to it. It was the sentinel of the village.
Exactly. And it's like you just eloquently put, it stood in for all of those things. Every secret police force that the world has ever seen, probably all the way back to ancient Rome. I mean, these are the jack-booted thugs that are going to come get you if you literally step across a line.
Yeah. These are the people that knocked on the door.
By the way, we have a lot of super chats.
Okay, I mean, do you want to smash through some of them, or should we quickly smash through to the end of the episode and then jump into the super chats?
Yeah, well, either way, however you want to do it. I felt bad because we've been going almost an hour and a half, and we haven't addressed anyone.
Okay, well, let's do some super chats then.
A few because man, there's a lot. This is good.
Good boys. Good girls.
Let's see.
People love the prisoner.
They love and they should, by God. Let's see. Rob Altus sends in a super chat and says, "Hey guys, loving The Prisoner. I've never watched it before, but glad I discovered it because of you guys and Gary and Doomcock."
Oh, God,
well, that's
music to my ears.
Yeah, if nothing else, that's what the point of these shows are. Shane O'Reilly just sent in a super chat, so thank you, Shane. Mr. Insanity sent in a super chat. Scottish Nerd sent in a super chat. John Suntress I don't know if you know John, he's a great guy. He has the Word Balloon podcast, and he does interviews with comic creators and lots of other pop culture figures. He's great. He says, give a link to your first intro talk. I will. It's not in the description yet. I'll put it there. Did they make a Hot Wheels-sized toy of the car, of the Lotus? If you guys ever want 3 talkers, I'd be down. I scan YouTube constantly for more discussion about this series and know it's in good hands with you guys. Be seeing you. And have you guys seen the Gil Kane or Jack Kirby adaptations of Arrival?
Jack Kirby, yes.
Yeah, I have seen that, but I have not seen the Gil Kane. And Julius.
Yeah.
Julie,
Sorry, go on.
Oh, just as good. Julius Goodwin sends it super chat. Thank you, Julius. He's a longtime supporter of the channel. Mark C says something really interesting. Something to consider with the jump cuts and quick zooms. Subconsciously, as the viewer, you are given the POV of number 2 spying on him. I actually absolutely agree with that.
Sorry, can you just read that one again? Sorry.
He says, Mark C says, something to consider. With the jump cuts and quick zooms, subconsciously as the viewer, you are given the POV of number 2 spying on him.
Oh, possibly, yeah, very possibly.
You know, there's a lot of wide-screen, wide-angle shots. Which
zooming in, they could be cameras.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Scottish Nerd sends in a super chat and says, "Gentlemen, Gary introduced me to both of you, and now you stream together. Thank you both for your love of fandom. You can't stop the signal."
Mal.
Mark C says, "Curious, Bond's recovery or the capturing of Mr. White in Casino Royale, is that film in the same location as The Village? The architecture is similar." It is not.
No, that was Italy.
Yeah, that was Italy. And 200 Watt Studio says, organizations hate individuals. They didn't want to know why he quit, but how he was able to assert his individuality. They wanted to know how to prevent it."
Well, they say multiple times throughout the season they want to know his secrets. They want to know the secrets. So what the secrets represented, we don't know.
I mean, I think that now, like we talk a lot about what the series means now, I think the idea that now data mining, the more they know about us as individuals, our tastes, our desires. Yeah. So in a way, what
you like to eat, what you like to,
and so
politics.
So there you go. It stands in for we want to know everything about you, and they're getting it from us. I mean, the only protection the individual has now against, say, the big info, whatever you want to call it, is our minds. They can't read our minds yet. They can't get into our heads without us voluntarily letting them in or telling them.
And yet we're moving very slowly, but we're moving into a world of virtual reality. Where we will be passing on desires, where we will be asking, so we're kind of almost moving into the early stages of that part of the process, shall we say?
Marconi Cliche sends in a super chat and says, 24 work units for non-alcoholic Village vodka. Yeah. Damn you guys, you beat me to a prisoner reaction review video. Rebel, reactionary, disharmonious. I'm looking forward to more. Be seeing you. And then Julius Goodwin, one of the great quotes, says, first they came for the socialists and I did not speak out. I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists and I did not speak out. I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews. I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me. And there was no one left to speak for me. Martin Muller. Yeah, that's a great one. And then 200 Watt Studio sends in a super chat and says, frankly, if they didn't have the surreal rover, they couldn't have had the surreal last episode. I don't know about that.
No, there's some surreal episodes before then.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I think the rover helped set up the surrealistic aspects of the rest of the series.
Yeah, it was the major part of the first episode which didn't conform to normality, shall we say. You could believe in surveillance, you could believe in technology, you could believe in kidnapping, and you could believe in them refurbing a place for him to be. You could believe in being held in a village against his will. You could believe in this sort of openness of it because of the surveillance. Rover, that's unworldly technology almost.
Right.
So that was the thing which stuck out like a sore thumb in a very good way, because you looked at Rover and it was just like, ooh, I don't want to mess with that.
Well, another thing, I mean, I think getting back to the show itself, there's a helicopter in this episode. You know, we get to see, and what I love too is that helicopter. And I forgot the make and model of it, but it shows up in so many. To me, it defines, like you talked earlier about Capricorn 1, and there is something. Helicopters have been made to become the ultimate example of surveillance. You know, there is something menacing when you see helicopters in movies, whether it's Apocalypse Now in the beginning, or
it's because they can hover, they can hang, they can do
Blue
everything.
Thunder, you know, the movie Blue Thunder from '83.
Oh yeah,
you've got,
wow, that was not like the series, was it?
No, but the tactical helicopter operational response that was full of surveillance technology, and John Carpenter always makes good use of helicopters in his films to be ominous. And one of the great things about the particular helicopter in this episode, it's that great, like, governmental 60s design that in a way I've always seen it as authoritarian, and when it appears here just as much, because it's always in the service of the government, and they could have used any helicopter, but they picked this particular one with the big...
I mean, it also represented the you know, how close you could be from escape but still being trapped. And even as we saw at the end of Arrival, when he actually gets into the helicopter and takes off, you might feel as if you're escaping, but you can always be dragged back.
Right. Exactly.
And and that's the beauty of it. And I think what was quite interesting is, because they went to Portmeirion to film twice, they had access to the helicopter in the first batch of filming, but they didn't have access to the helicopter in the second, and they were hoping to have it for the second as well. So the helicopter was meant to play a bigger part than it did. It was always meant to be an omnipresent aspect, just like Rover was and such.
And it represented escape too. The helicopter could spirit you away to wherever it is you needed to go, and it was really it was a representation of, this is the only way. Like, if you had a helicopter, it insinuated that you could fly it somewhere, wherever that might be. And I always liked that image of, and it was number two's, you know, it was number two's helicopter, and he could go and come back and wherever he went to. And it represented freedom.
Yes.
And in this episode, freedom...
unattainable freedom for the most of it, though.
Yes. And it was the carrot that was dangled in front of you to sort of keep you going. And again, in a way, it made me sad that number 6 now that he has number 6 hung on him, he's been given his number by number 2. He can now go and order things and make phone calls and buy maps. And
but the clever thing about the helicopter in Arrival is you're thinking it's 6 attempting to escape, but they're actually trapping the girl.
Right.
It wasn't number 6 they're after. It was the girl and trapping the girl and seeing where her loyalties lied. And her loyalties lied to the individual. You never saw her again. She actually appeared as the Colonel's daughter in Danger Man as well.
Yeah.
Tragic. Killed herself that year as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, committed suicide in 67 or 68. Yeah, apparently had a very, very troubled person in reality. But the role she played in this show was so believable and vulnerable. And
oh, she was a great. I mean, they cast her. It was so great because, like you said, she was a damsel in distress that felt very lost. Like you were immediately, and at the time, you know the trope of the hero saving a damsel in distress, you could still do that and people wouldn't have a problem with it. I mean, that was a staple of television. So,
but she didn't want to go. That was the beauty of it. He was like, "Let's go." She's like, "I don't want to go."
Right.
I never intended to leave. I wanted to leave with Cobb, who was played by Paul Eddington.
Right.
And the cast for the first episode is just incredible.
It's terrific.
And so she wouldn't go with him. So we didn't get that classic damsel in distress, the man saving the woman.
But he tried.
Well, he asked, and she said no. But he's like, all right then. So he goes off, and then the beautiful thing is the Colonel turns around and says, "Game of chess, my dear." I don't play chess. He's like, "Come over, I'll teach you." And so she just turns around and sits down, and then he just looks up and he says, "We're all pawns, my dear." And then she just realizes she's been done.
Well, I think that's one of my favorite moments in the whole series too.
Yeah,
you know, the line delivery is so beautifully done. It's so perfect. But that again, that's a central. I think that's a central theme in any story about individuality and trying to buck the system, and it was done so well because the chess playing was set up earlier in the episode too. So it's what a great. And I love the way
we saw the chess sets with the old folks home.
Yeah,
and we have the real life, the real size chess set where people are used.
Yes, which I still have nightmares.
On.
I've had nightmares about being on a living chessboard and not being allowed to leave forever since I was a kid. Maybe because of the prisoner.
Well, they do mention, of course, that in ye olde times, earls or whatever would use servants as chess pieces and behead them when they were taken. I believe that would probably be correct, in some parts of Europe.
Yeah, that
wouldn't surprise me, put it that way.
No. But that, again, another thing that we see happening is the machinations of what goes on in the village with who it's not just, I mean, it allows number 6 to sort of see, okay, he's not necessarily the focus. He's a new arrival here. But there's other, and that's something else that I think is really important, that we see that there are others. I mean, the show starts out sparse in terms of showing us other people, and as the episode moves along, they're showing us more and more and more people here, and that and it allows him to understand that, okay, he's not alone. They're not just after him. There's a whole cadre of people here.
Yeah, it's a 2-for-1 sale they get. Because they want to break number 6's spirit, showing that he can't escape. But at the same time, it's the girl that was the focal point of the whole aspect of it. And then when Paul Eddington's leaving at the end, he says, go easy on the girl. And he says, don't worry, she'll be well looked after. And he says, that's what I'm afraid of. And it's just like, it's such great lines, And then when they're leaving, Baker says au revoir, and then Eddington says Auf Wiedersehen. Can't keep my new masters waiting. And it's just all to throw you about, where they're from, where are their allegiances? Is this an international organization that has infiltrated every government? But we get to that later on with Cargill. Is Cargill the same character as number 2 that he was in Many Happy Returns?
Right.
I mean, in my head, he is.
Yes, absolutely he is.
Yeah, so hence why he's so vicious towards number 2. It's number 6 in it. But again, these are episodes for other times. But yes, there's that the very, very sinister nature of the village is brought out there.
Would you say that, I mean, people always talk about now that, wow, the first season of a show, it needs to get up to speed. As a first episode of this show, how do you feel, how do you think Arrival does in terms of setting this whole thing up and getting it all into motion?
Oh, I think it's one of the greatest first episodes of the show there's ever been.
I do too.
I mean, even, you know, from today's standards, we get bogged down in a lot of exposition. We have a lot of superficiality with characters, a lot of tropes. Particularly nowadays, we have a lot of typecasting and stereotyping. And it was done at a time where they just wanted who they wanted. And I actually even mentioned last week, a couple of weeks back, this was probably a show that could have really benefited from a bit more diversity in the number 2s to keep that you offset about who exactly. But then I also countered it by saying when you just have a bunch of very British people,
right,
it kind of appears a little bit more sinister because again you have no idea who they represent. They could represent Nigeria for all we know.
Right.
So there was that beauty to it, but as a first episode, it sets it up immediately. You're invested straight away in the mystery. You're introduced to the village very succinctly. Number 2 comes along very organically. Then you have the underbelly of the village, which is exposed briefly. Then you know the sinister nature of it. And then you have the final part of the story with Cobb, the girl, his death, and number 6. And it just ends with him attempting to escape, being brought back. It's an almost perfect episode of television. That could have been a show done, dusted, and over.
Right. Absolutely.
In a singular episode. Yeah.
And one of the things that, you know,
it's the greatest episode of The Twilight Zone that was ever made.
Let me ask you something about the final. They have a trope in the show that ends with the face coming toward the prison bars and the prison bars slamming shut. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think it's a bit clumsy, but it's meant to symbolize escape being stopped. So there's no escape. That's what it's meant to do. I was always happy with it. I was always fine with it.
See,
it's blunt,
yeah,
and it's it's obvious, but
I mean, I love
it's the sound. It's the sound I think more than anything that's slamming prison door.
That's what I was going to say. The slamming prison door works, but it's like the evocation that it's a prison cell. I always thought like, I never quite liked it.
It's on the nose.
Yes,
it's on the nose, and the show is very nuanced. But at the same time, it's always about not every episode is about escape.
Right.
But it's really kind of like harping on the remoteness, the isolation of the village.
I guess if it wasn't at the end of Arrival, like just the way they added the regular opening at the beginning of the second episode, and if it had been a trope after Arrival, I would have liked it better, I think. But
yeah, I mean, Arrival could have almost ended with him just walking up to the camera, and then maybe even just the sound effect. I think the sound effect probably would have worked better. I mean, fade to black, slam.
It could have been just a graphic design thing that the company doing the end credits did, and they like, oh, that's cool, and they left it in.
But the end credits are incredible.
Incredible.
The building of the penny farthing is
it's such a great idea, and the music too. Again, the score for these episodes, and a lot of them have been released on CD. The music is so good. I was gonna play it, but I didn't want to, get a copyright strike. You never know.
It's such a shame, isn't it?
It's like, come on, man.
The great Power Themes 90, which I sent you as well.
Yeah,
the remix.
It's so good. And I think another thing about the end of the episode, it is very bleak. I mean, if like you said, if somebody ever just watched Arrival, if that's all they ever watched, it is soul crushing. The individual is gone.
I've heard David Tomlin talk about this. And he was kind of like, David Tomlin sort of things like this, doesn't he? Like David Tomlin. So like, we didn't know really what to do because, at the end of every episode, like, he's not like escaping anywhere, is he? So it's like, how do we like make a show where the main character doesn't like escape, and we got to make it feel as if he's like got a victory and stuff. So it's they thought about that. They thought we've got a show here where our main character loses every episode.
Right.
That's going to get very depressing very quickly for people. And so he would always have, there would always be something, there'd be episodes which he loses, but there'd be episodes in which he wins. He wins checkmate. He wins hammer and anvil.
Yeah.
He wins that beautifully. He horrifically loses in checkmate. And it's so clever.
So good.
The way that he does, but we'll talk about that when we talk about that. In Dance of the Dead, he kind of wins in a way and loses in another way. Chimes of Big Ben, he kind of wins and he loses again. So there's this win and loss.
A spectacular loss though in
A, B, and C wins A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Do not forget me, oh my darling, wins in that. So he gets his licks. Change of mind, he wins a change of mind. Free for all takes a big defeat again. So you have these, and I think it's wonderful, because we're so used nowadays to the trope of hero in show 45 minutes without commercial. Hero goes in Act 1, 2, wins in 3. And this show was never intended to be that. This show was meant to be that battle of minds, battle of wills, and this hero was gonna lose, and he was gonna lose a lot.
And I think, again, if you look at genre television of the 60s, and also British TV as well, I mean, shows like UFO, not exactly a show where our heroes would win. Another show that was pretty bleak. The Twilight Zone has a lot of episodes where people don't win, a
lot of loss in that. Yeah,
and I think that there was there's a maturity in this show that is striking for, and I don't know. There's actually, people forget when you go back and you watch. Look, there's a lot of garbage in 60s television as well, but this show, as with a lot of genre fare, I mean, Star Trek, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, another show that can have bleak endings, but shows that touch on science fiction or surrealism or something like that, were able to get away with endings like this. They didn't have to.
Yeah, I mean, you had an episode when we talk about Schizoid Man. You have an episode where everyone loses.
Right.
and that ending is, I think Schizoid Man's ending is one of the best endings of the series, because every single one of them loses.
Right.
From number 2 to number 6 to the people, without ruining it for others, the people involved in it, everyone loses. And there is like I said, there's a beauty. Sometimes there's a maturity and a beauty in it. Checkmate is spectacular the way he loses. It's so clever, it's so good that even at the end you're like, just like, you did yourself. And I think that's great because it also shows that our main character is not he's not infallible.
Right.
You know, he can make mistakes, or he can be caught himself, or you know, there are areas where he himself gets above his station, which we see in Checkmate, and so to have those losses, you can still have a loss and a victory at the same time. Chimes of Big Ben, I think, is one of them, and Many Happy Returns got loss or defeat.
It doesn't.
Possibly, I just love. It's my favorite episode. It's so good. It's just so good. And when you realize what happens in there, so I think a show that it enables you to do that, a show that allows its main protagonist to take so many hits, but still you're constantly rooting for him. And I think that's the beauty of it. If he was to always win, you'd kind of be like, why do we care about this guy in the village? And we care about him because he's intelligent, he's resourceful, he has morals, he has scruples, and he's, even though he's very stern, he does have a compassion for the right people. But he'll read you like a fucking drag queen on a RuPaul show, you know? He will see right through you.
No, I mean, another great thing is like you said, he's just a very, very smart antagonist. Protagonist. He doesn't do stupid things, and it's funny. In fact, he's the exact opposite. So often, it's his cleverness and his resourcefulness that you're rooting for, and you get bamboozled into thinking that he's going to win. Like, even when he loses spectacularly, you think no, this time he's really going to pull it out, and sometimes he does.
Yeah, because I mean,
for a while.
It won't get to Fallout. I have my own idea about the end of Fallout, but we can get that. Do you want to smash through some more super chats?
Yeah, we got a few more. We've got Brandon Sheehy sends in a super chat and says, "Did you like the world building in Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow? The story is weak, but the wartime steampunk world they inhabit is pretty cool." Well, you know what? I'm a fan of retro sci-fi, especially sci-fi of the 30s. I love the design work and all that. And so I did like the world building in that. The movie is just okay, but I like what they tried to do. 200 Watt Studio sends in a super chat and says, "That's what I meant. Rover set up the surreality of the show." Right, as we talked about. You're right about that. I think it does. Gerald says, "Keep up the great work, gentlemen." John says, "Hail R&B and Az. Thank you so much for doing these shows. I've only seen these in college. Now at 56, these all seem new again. Wish you could do these once a week. Cheers to you both."
We are.
Yeah.
We are now. We're doing it every Wednesday now.
We're going to do them every Wednesday and bang through the show. But that ends the super chats. We've gone over 2 hours.
Do you want to? I mean, we can end now, or do we go through our list of how we think?
Well, I was thinking we should start next week's show with our list so we can talk about the different orders and the controversies. And
what about homework for the crowd, though? They got to watch their episode homework.
Oh, that's true. Well, okay. Well, yeah, then let's do that.
Or, let's compromise. Should we discuss briefly then what we think is the second episode chronologically that should be watched?
Yes, go ahead. Yes. I'll tell you what.
Should we just bang through our lists and we'll see? Or
I'll tell you what I don't like. I mean, I'll say this: the list. I don't know where is it. The broadcast order. The Chimes of Big Ben comes next. That's the one that
in the broadcast
in order, the broadcast order. I will say right away that I hate that. I hate because the what happens in Chimes of Big Ben is big, and it is something that I think it tips the hand of the rest of the series too much, and it's a big twist, and I think it needs to come later. Although
I have it very later.
Yes, very much so.
Also, the language in the episode clearly shows that the number 6 has been in the village for a long time.
For a long time, even though I understand. I mean, the number 2 that's introduced in the episode, of course, is
Leo McCurn, yes,
which I think people define as the number 2. You know, the best number 2. And I mean, I get that. Maybe I don't know why that was aired that way, but I don't like that it comes second.
No, I do not. I'll tell you where I have Chimes of Big Ben. Episode 14.
Ooh, wow, okay.
Is where I put Chimes of Big Ben.
Interesting.
Because I lead it into a big Leo McCurn ending.
Oh, right.
Because of the, like you say, what happens to the Chimes of Big Ben is so important. I think they bring Leo McCurn back quickly for the round 2. But that leads immediately into Fallout. So that's why I personally have Chimes of Big Ben at number 14.
Yes, okay. Now, I have to tell you, I was talking to you earlier before we went on. Director Alex Cox, who made the movie Repo Man, he wrote a book about The Prisoner.
Yeah.
And in a video, he found it at a bookstore. He found an old ITC program about the show before it had aired. And like when they were, I guess, trying to sell it. Mm-hmm. And the order that this particular booklet gave as the second episode is Many Happy Returns.
Wow.
And I thought that...
Wow.
Right? Many Happy Returns. And at first I rejected that, but I'll tell you why I was thinking with that as number 2, it made me want to go back and watch Many Happy Returns as the second episode just to see what they were thinking back then.
Oh my God. Do you know something that it could actually work. It could work because of A, B, and C.
Well, A, B, and C was episode 3.
And Georgina Cookson appears in A, B, and C.
Yeah. So I'm like,
does she appear because he's seen her as the number 2 and therefore he's a figment of... he's a character that she's put into the...
Yeah. And I thought that was fascinating. Wow. And so I'm like, I kind of wanted to watch Many Happy Returns and A, B, and C. But I don't know if we can, because I don't know if people would object to us going with some different order than the broadcast airing order here, which I've never believed in anyway. And of course,
I've never believed in it, but I know we could ask the audience. Always ask the audience.
That's true.
How they feel. So what do you have as number 2? What do you think chronologically was number 2 then?
Well, I'm iffy on that. I don't know. I mean, I think the problem is, as you brought up when we were talking, you want to make sure that I think the key is making Patrick McGoohan's journey through this experience. Yeah. I mean, number 6 has to be paramount. And yes. And I don't know, because again, there are episodes that insinuate he's been in the village for a long time and episodes where he clearly hasn't, and they need to be rejiggered. But I do think that one of his original 7, was it 7? His original
7, yes.
I mean, I think McGoohan's broadcast order was pretty good in that respect.
Well, I'm gonna have to do it. I'm afraid I'm gonna have to shoot down Many Happy Returns as number 2 for a very specific reason. It is mentioned in Many Happy Returns that he's been away for a year.
Right, that's true.
He's so to go from episode 1 to episode 2, year gap doesn't work for me.
That's fine.
So I actually have Many Happy Returns though episode 6 on my list.
Oh, I like that.
So that's where I position Many Happy Returns. I'll go through my list, my 17.
Okay.
And you see what you think. So I have obviously Arrival number 1, Dance of the Dead number 2.
Yes. Okay, that's yes.
Free for all, number 3.
Yes, and I think we should do. I think then we both agree. Let's do Dance of the Dead for
Dance of the Dead
2.
next week. Then,
yeah,
excellent.
Let's do that.
Number 3, Free for all. Number 4, A, B, and C. Number 5, Checkmate.
No. Okay.
Number 6, Many Happy Returns.
Yep. Okay.
Number 7, It's Your Funeral.
Okay.
Number 8, The General.
That's interesting. Okay, that's interesting. I had It's Your Funeral and The General reversed. But okay, let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
Schizoid Man, number 9. Hammer into Anvil, number 10. Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling, number 11. A Change of Mind, number 12. Living in Harmony, 13. Chimes of Big Ben, 14. The Girl Who Was Death, 15.
Yep.
Once Upon a Time, 16. Fallout, 17. That's... And the reason why I went this was, I think Arrival and Dance for the Dead are absolutely the first 2 episodes. Because in Dance for the Dead, it is mentioned multiple occasions, he's literally just arrived at the village. So I can see the female number 2 taking over from Baker.
Right.
Free for all, very similar.
Yeah.
Very early doors of him being at the village.
Yeah. So I mean, so if Arrival, Dance of the Dead, Free for All, Checkmate, the General, A, B, and C, Schizoid Man, Many Happy Returns, Chimes of Big Ben, Living in Harmony, Change of Mind, Hammer into Anvil, Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling, It's Your Funeral, Girl Who Was Death, Once Upon a Time, and Fallout.
They're not massively different.
No,
Not
but
massive. My logic was number 2's attitude, number 6's attitude.
Right.
That was my logic. So I think the first 3 of just very chronologically logical. A, B, and C kind of fits there. Mm-hmm. Then I thought, because of A, B, and C, he gets a win, so he gets a little bit more confident, and that's why I have Checkmate next.
Right. Okay.
Because of what he does in Checkmate.
Yeah.
And then because of the repercussions of Checkmate, we then have Many Happy Returns because of the isolation element. Then It's Your Funeral. I have after Many Happy Returns because I feel after that episode he's on a bit of a rampage, even though it's controlled.
Interesting. Okay.
But he wants revenge for what they did to him in Many Happy Returns. The General, he's settling back down again, and he's getting a reputation of somebody in the village who is not conforming. Schizoid Man, they're trying to put the pressure on.
Yeah. Okay.
Because of that. Hammer into Anvil, because we've had the gap now for Many Happy Returns, and we have Patrick Cargill as number 2. And I think the characters are the same character from Many Happy Returns to Hammer into Anvil. That's the way that I've always looked at it. Patrick Cargill's the same character. Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling, because after Hammer into Anvil,
I agree.
They push. Yeah,
I absolutely think that's absolutely correct.
They kind of push that. A Change of Mind is almost the village getting revenge on number 6 because of his desire to turn things around because of the ending of Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling. Living in Harmony because they're upping up the psychotropic drugs now. They've tried the hook and now they're trying the crook. Chimes of Big Ben, because I think he's well established in the village by then. Girl Who's Death, because you need that break between, and it's a very nondescript episode.
Yes.
And then you've got to have Once Upon a Time Fallout. They follow on from each other anyway. So
yeah. No, I agree with that. I like that. I like your order. I think that order works really, really well.
It's an order.
we have a super chat that says, "Stay with broadcast order. Discuss your chronology." But I just don't like the broadcast order. I'm trying to like find McGoohan's preferred listing, and even in his preferred list,
his preferred listing, it's Arrival, Dance of the Dead, Free for All.
So we'll do
Checkmate, Chimes of Big Ben, Once Upon a Time, Fallout.
Yeah, see, Chimes of Big Ben.
I think Chimes of Big Ben, then Checkmate, then. Actually.
Yeah. I mean, I like that, but I think we've got to do Dance of the Dead next. We can't do Chimes of Big Ben next.
I think we've got to do Dance of the Dead next.
Let's do that. Bunyan Snipe says, I like the idea he's been there a whole year between the first 2 episodes.
yeah. It's a hell of a gap to have, and that's why you need, that's. But I think 6 episodes in a year, 6 episodes. That's where I'm personally putting it. But I think that's a decent time for him to have elapsed by then.
Jeff Yerke says, hey, Rob, I love Arrival. I think the only better pilot is Battlestar Galactica's first episode 33. Which is a great episode of Battlestar Galactica, but I would have to say that 33 wasn't the pilot, it would be the miniseries.
It was the miniseries.
33 was the first episode of the regular series. But I would agree with you. I think 33 is one of the greatest hours of sci-fi television ever done. I mean, it's
good. I don't like it better than Arrival, but it's very good.
Oh no, I don't like it better than Arrival at all. But because also Arrival's truly the first episode of a show that sets up the premise and everything that happens. So
it's interesting with the Cylons arriving and destroying the outpost and whatnot.
Yeah, and Curry sent in a super chat, didn't have a question. So thanks for that.
Did you grab?
I think I've got everybody's.
Jeff Yerke's super chat.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry. So homework, Dance of the Dead for next week.
Dance of the Dead. I love that.
I think it makes sense. I think it makes perfect sense. I think it makes chronological sense. It's a great episode as well.
It's
good.
Very
difficult not to say it's a great episode of the show. But
do you have an episode you like the least?
The Girl Who Was Death.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of
it just feels jarring. I know what they were trying to do. To me, it didn't fit with the show. I did watch it recently, and I just enjoyed it for what it was, but it's definitely in line with least favorite of The Prisoner.
No, it seems like they had to come up with somebody pitch. I think that
it was one of the additional episodes.
Yeah, it was an additional episode. I feel that like McGoohan's probably like, whatever.
Yes,
look, you paid.
I think things checked out by then. Yeah,
you paid for the show, so if we have to do another one, that's fine.
Yeah,
okay.
But other than that, to me, I have a lot of love for everything.
Right, me too.
Yeah, absolutely everything after that. Yeah, for one reason or another. Yeah, but Dance of the Dead's so good.
Yeah,
without saying so, but Dance of the Dead's great because it's when you're not even trying to hide the manipulation.
No. Everyone knows.
It's when you're not even trying to hide it. It's just out there, right out there. This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing with you, mate.
Now, is all of the prison... I know that Shout put up Arrival on YouTube for free. Mm-hmm. Where can we direct people? Like, I've got the Blu-rays and I don't.
Yeah.
Should we direct people to see all the episodes?
Amazon.
So it is Amazon. If it's streaming on Prime.
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon Prime. You can either purchase individual episodes, or you can get the whole series for like £13, probably about $15, $16, round about that for the Americans. But yeah, you can pick up the whole season. It's in standard def, but it's fine.
Yeah. Although those Blu-ray restorations,
those Blu-rays though,
they are gorgeous. By the way,
they are very nice.
Bunyan Snipe sends in a tip and says the ABBA album Arrival is sadly not a concept album based on The Prisoner.
It's a shame. Be nice if it was.
Too bad.
So your homework, crowd, is to watch Dance of the Dead for next week.
Dance of the Dead for next week. And then are we going to watch A, B, and C for the week after? No.
Free for all.
Oh yeah, no, we should absolutely. Pardon me, we should absolutely watch
I
Free
think
for All.
Free for All, then ABC.
Yeah, Free
ABC.
for All was actually on my list as number 3 on my list. So yeah, it's interesting. I was reading the ITC list. On the ITC list that they first were selling to shows, ABC, their order of the episodes were. This is interesting. Arrival. Many Happy Returns, as I said, ABC, The Schizoid Man, Free for All, Checkmate, The Chimes of Big Ben, The General, It's Your Funeral, Hammer and Anvil, Change of Mind, and Dance of the Dead. I think it was Dance, yeah. And then they had...
Well, if you swap Dance of the Dead and Many Happy Returns, that's decent.
Yeah. And then they had Once Upon a Time. So they had the first either the first 12 but they had Once Upon a Time listed as episode 16, and in the brochure they didn't have 4 of the episodes because I guess they didn't know yet. So
they gave them 13, didn't they? And then Lude Grade wanted 26.
Right.
So he said, I want another 13. And then McGoohan said, I can only come up with 4 or 5 more, whatever it was.
Right.
To get to 17. And then he was like, okay, that'll do.
Sean M sends in a super chat and says, show name suggestion, Kosho Deathmatch 5000. And
that's some weird shit, that was.
Slevin Beam sends in a tip and says, sounds intriguing. Now I have a different show to watch. Thank you to both of you.
Oh,
well then,
any convert.
Don't just go back and watch what we're going to watch next week. Don't do that. You got to watch Arrival too.
Yeah, you got to watch Arrival first.
Watch
Absolutely.
them both. Kosho Deathmatch 5000. Let's do that. No.
Do you have a little swimming pool we can stick between the trampolines?
Yeah. Well, I guess this was a good 2 hours, even with our little dropping out in the middle, which I'll cut out.
Yeah,
of this,
yeah.
So
I think we started about 10 minutes late, and then we had the drop out. So I think we've hit 2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours of actual rambling,
which is good.
Oh, I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
No, I
could go all day with this show. I could go all day with this show.
I mean, we could, and it'll be fun when more and more people have watched the show, and I think are going to have a lot more to say as they participate with us.
Yeah.
So and look, it is not painful homework, people. You're going to have a good time.
No.
You're going to have a good time watching one of the most. You're going to see, if you've never seen The Prisoner before, you're going to see one of the most influential television shows, and you'll see how influential it is. And it's lost none of its power.
No, it really hasn't. If you know, I think especially at this day and age, you can relate so much to modern day even now, and that's crazy.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
200 Watt Studio sends in another super chat and says, "I envy any person watching the show for the first time."
Oh, amen. Yeah.
That is incredible.
I get what you're saying, but the beauty is you just watch an episode still and it's just like beams, and smile beams.
And there is a documentary that is also on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, for free. You can watch that for free. Yeah. Which was the 2017 documentary. Right. So that would have been alongside for the 50th anniversary.
Although, do you think people should watch that before they watch the whole series? I usually think not.
No, I think I like people to watch the show before they watch documentaries.
Me too.
You get a feel for the show yourself. You formulate your own opinions about the show yourself, and then you watch the documentaries and stuff like that, and you just kind of shed some light on certain aspects of it. But yeah, watch the show first. Documentaries later.
Right. Well, that's great. I mean, should we bring this show?
Cynical Victim, Dance to the Dead is the homework.
Right. Dance to the Dead is the homework. And and if you haven't watched Arrival yet, please watch that as well. I can't stress that enough because you really need to know where we're at here.
Yeah. And like you said, it's you will not regret it.
No. Well, this is, again, it's just a joy to be doing this with you.
Oh, thank you, sir. It's a joy to be doing it with you.
So
the
much
quickest
fun.
Couple of hours of my life, yeah.
I know, these shows go by so quickly, and it's...
We could have gone on.
Yeah, we could. And I like the fact, we're going to discuss philosophy more so than plots. I mean, I thought at first, I didn't know if we were going to go through the episode plot-wise, but we shouldn't. We should just talk about what we're thinking about the episodes, because people can watch them. So
the show doesn't. It's not a standard show. It's meant to make you think. It's meant to make you kind of see the analogies which are being placed in here, as well as the standard entertainment aspect of it.
Right. We're not really reviewing the shows so much as discussing the shows.
Discussing the show, discussing the show, and if we go a little bit in order to make it easier, then sure. But as you'll see from Dance of the Dead, it does introduce a little bit of surreal in it as well.
Absolutely.
So, which is, but I can't know. Shush.
We won't.
About it. Yeah, we'll talk about it next time. But it's a pleasure. Thank you ever so much indeed for having us on. It's an absolute pleasure to talk this with you, because.
And we should also explain, we're splitting these up. We're going to do one on my channel and then one, so we'll be on Az's channel next week. Yeah. Doing this there. So.
Are we doing, not sure on time yet. Is it going to be 10 or is it going to be 12?
Can we do them at 12? That would be perfect for me. Okay, if that's fine.
12?
Yeah. So, if we keep that time.
12 o'clock Pacific, then 8 p.m. UK.
See, I think that works good for everyone around the world, so.
Yeah.
Unless you
live
live
that's fine. Fine by me.
Okay.
Unless you live in New Zealand, I suppose. Or
yeah.
Might be a bit early for you, but, sorry. So thank you so much indeed. I'll let you do your thing.
Well, where can people find you? For those of you who have tuned in from my channel that might not know you, where can they find, aside from...
you've got me wonderfully placed down there on Twitter at HeelsvsBabyface, and then on here at YouTube, HeelsvsBabyface on YouTube. So if you type that in, if you want to subscribe, that'd be wonderful. I normally shout at clouds, and this is my therapy. It's just such a pleasure to come and talk about something that I love and adore, and to have somebody with the same passion for it and hear their ideas and thoughts about the show just enriches my own.
Well, and I've right back at you. It's and to have discourse where we can celebrate something.
Yes.
Where we can talk about something we love, and it's always fun to do that. And I think that's great. I mean, here we know this show is great already.
Yes.
And it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to hear more people chime in who have not heard of the series or who haven't watched the series, and they're going to come back and chime in more, because I love hearing about that too. Like, I know, isn't it great? It's like we're pushers and we're selling people a new great drug.
Yeah.
That we know is good.
I love the super chats that are just like, I had never seen this show. I'm watching it now for the first time, and you just kind of feels like you just had a baby.
I know. And on that note,
I'm a proud father.
I will say I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank my moderating staff. I think the Richard is here, Haynock is here. I don't know who else is here. Robert Pariso is here, and Joshua Levesque is here. I want to thank all of you guys for moderating and be great moderators. And I want to say that anybody who is an imagination connoisseur over here at the Post-Geek Singularity, remember to visit the Post-Geek Singularity or Whining About Movies Facebook page. And the Richard is always throwing watch parties, and I wouldn't put it past him to start showing Prisoner episodes as some of his watch parties on Facebook. So you can always go over there and find them. And as I always like to say, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. And to end all of these shows, it would not be correct if we didn't say,
Be seeing you.
Thanks very much, everybody.